Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Illegitimate Legends, the show where I like to talk about some of the more unusual League of Legends champion builds. This week, well, I figured last week we turned tank into a deep AP, so this week I'd turn an AP into a tank. We're taking Annie. Tank Annie. Now, this build is focused primarily around one of Annie's abilities, the Molten Shield. I'm going to tell you all the stats of it, and actually be correct for once. Molten Shield places a shield around Annie for 8 seconds, increasing armor and magic resist by 60 at level 5, and deals 60 damage, magic damage return to people who attack her with basic attacks, and has an 0.2 ability power ratio. Now that's not all that much, let's be perfectly honest, but it is return damage. And so 100 AP and level 5 of that ability, that's 80 damage returned every time somebody hits you. Not an amazing amount, but couple it with Annie's really powerful other abilities and remarkably short cooldowns, you've got a very powerful champ. You've also got the capacity to support your team with AoE stuns with very long duration. When you get right down to it, the AoE and duration of the stun is fantastic. You can stop an entire team dead in its tracks with good positioning and a tiny bit of luck. Now, I'm not the best Annie in the world, so I had a few difficulties getting the stuns to be exactly where I wanted them and on which abilities I wanted them on. But a highly skilled Annie player could make that very different. You could get your stuns down exactly where you wanted, when you wanted them. You've crushed the opposition already, because it gives your teammates time to finish up, clean up whatever's in your way. I'm gonna be honest, that's all there is to it. You put your shield on in combat and throw your abilities around, focusing more on the stun than on dealing damage, although damage is vital. Another thing you want to remember with this build though is that if you're in retreat as Annie, always make it a fighting retreat, even if your abilities aren't hitting because you've made too much of a gap. If you can turn around and throw Incinerate, that gets you more on the way to your stun. That means that if they do get too close, you can stop them. Very important skill to master. The fighting retreat is incredibly useful with this build. It's all about getting ability power and resistances, and that's really all there is to it. You could just stack Rod of Ages on this build, and you'd end up quite powerful because you'd have a lot of return damage, a lot of AP, all your abilities would be quite strong, because there's a decent amount of AP behind a Rod of Ages, and at the same time you'd have lots of health to back it up, but you don't have the natural resistances to just do that, I find. So I recommend building 1 or 2 Rod of Ages at different points throughout the game, usually starting with it, then getting a Thornmail to back up your return damage. Makes a DPS essentially useless against you. After that, what you get depends on the enemy team composition and what you really need. Cooldown reduction is highly important, not for most of Annie's abilities, but for Molten Shield. It's got an incredibly long cooldown compared to the rest of her abilities. Other than that, you want to be looking at armor to deal with DPS, so Frozen Heart's a fantastic item. Magic resist to deal with mages. A Banshee's Veil is fantastic for that, and just of course. There's really a lot of room for this build, but because it is a resistance-based tank, you need that room. You need to be able to vary your build depending on what you're encountering. No matter what you do though, this build will have problems with APs, because there's no real way to deal with a mage with this build except by stunning them. That's your best way to clear out problems of magic damage. Malzahar will ruin you because you can't get that much magic resist to completely deal with him. And because of the focus on return damage, you're unlikely to get that magic damage quickly. That's all there is to this build. Put your Molten Shield on, walk into combat, and destroy the enemy. At level 1, this is an anecdote, I fought a Xin. We were the only people in our lane, because others were elsewhere. It was me versus Xin at level 1. I put on Molten Shield, yes I took it first, it's a bit of an odd choice, but I did. And auto-attacked him. He left the fight with 1 block of health, that's less than 100 health. I left it on half health. Xin Zhao losing a fight to Annie at level 1, and Annie didn't have an offensive ability. This build works. I quite like it. I reckon you go try it out. Thank you all, and good night. If you go into the lane today, you better go in disguise. If you go into the lane today, prepare for a big surprise. 'Cause Tank Annie and Tibbers the Bear will soak damage and burn all your hair. Today's the day that Annie is building a tank.